Good morning from day 4 of the VanGOgh adventure. I woke up in Homer, Alaska this morning. I didn't do a recap last night because I was covert camping in a parking lot at a community center, and I had already moved from farther down the spit in the more touristy area because there were some police patrolling the parking lots and I didn't want to get asked to move in the middle of the night. So that was a first for me. I know a couple of you really want to know if I've used the luggable loo yet, and the answer is no luggable loo usage yet, though I might have preferred it to a couple of the roadside bathrooms that I stopped at, particularly one in a wildlife preserve at the trailhead that was closed due to recent bear activity. So I ran to the bathroom and ran back to the car and got the hell out of there. I just couldn't wait any longer. Yesterday was incredible. Whittier, the ride in on the ferry was so pretty, and there's so many glaciers in that area. So I sat on the deck and whale watched for most of the ride. There was a couple that had just retired from the Air Force and had just moved to Alaska and were exploring, and we had a great time swapping stories, and they told me a lot of tips and tricks for things to do in Sedona and to do the Antelope Slot Canyon since they used to be stationed in Tucson. And so that was really helpful, and it helped make the time pass by. It was a beautiful way to start the day. The views were, it was a lot of the same ride that I'd done on my glacier tour the day before. We just kept going to the next harbor. And then there wasn't a lot that I wanted to see or do in Whittier. It just made the most sense logistically for me to do one 5-hour drive to Valdez, and then it was actually cheaper to take the $255 ferry than it was to do the 5-hour drive, the gas, and I pay by the mile for the U-Haul. So it actually worked out until I had to move the ferry and incur another $75 cost to move it up 2 days so that I could accommodate my travel snafu. I only had a rough outline. I was just like, these are the little cities I want to stop at along the Kenai Peninsula, and I didn't really have much planned. I knew I really wanted to go to Homer. I've wanted to go there since Jules' press tour for Pieces of You, Me. I don't remember what the name of the record was, but she did so much press talking about growing up in Alaska and homesteading, and it sounded so interesting and different, and I knew I wanted to go but wasn't sure if I was going to make it because it was so far out of the way. But everybody that I talked to was like, it's so beautiful and so different from the rest of Alaska, you just need to go and see it. So I was driving and I was going to do, Homer's on one end of the peninsula and there's 2 touristy towns on the other side, so I was going to do those 2 and then work my way down. And I was like, Homer's my #1 priority. I'm just going to start there and then backtrack, and I'll see what I see on the way back, and it'll work out fine. So I went to turn around, and I wound up at Moose Pass, which was this beautiful little town with a great float plane airport at a bridge in a lake between some mountains. It was so pretty. So it was a perfect place to change my mind and backtrack a couple miles. And then just as you take the split to go towards Homer, there was this random glimpse of turquoise water like I've never seen. I've been to Turks and Caicos, I've been to beautiful beaches, I've seen pretty water, but this was a color that I just could not get out of my head. It was a lot like this color in my hat. And I was like, the first scenic turnout, I'm just gonna see if I can go see it closer. And if you watch my last video, you'll see that I pulled over and there was nothing in the parking lot. And then there were just some boulders with a small gap, and I was thinking, could this possibly be a trailhead? Should I be going down here? It can't hurt for me to go a little bit of the ways down. And it was a pretty steep jump off down the mountain, and I wound up with the most breathtaking view I've ever seen in my life, and it was so pretty and perfect, and it took my breath away, and I'm pretty sure it made me hysterical because I couldn't stop laughing. I was just like, this is not real life. I don't know how I found myself here, but it was perfect, and I had the whole spot to myself for like 15 minutes, and I could not get that turquoise to capture on my crappy iPhone 8. It was just not happening, and I'd gotten a little Sony point and shoot CyberShot camera for this trip just because I knew I wouldn't be able to get the northern lights. And so I climbed my way back up the hill, got the camera, came back down, and there were a whole bunch of people down there all of a sudden, and the clouds had come over the sun and the water wasn't the same color and it wasn't nearly as beautiful, but I was able to get somebody to take my Love Her Believe Her Wild photo and still enjoy. It's a very beautiful space regardless, but those minutes that I had to myself were completely magical. I was also all by myself for Portage Lake, so there are a whole bunch of glaciers right as you get through the tunnel from Whittier onto the Kenai Peninsula, and I was all alone at this glacial lake with icebergs, like little shards of ice floating on it, and wildflowers everywhere, and it was perfection. So the drive was gorgeous. There are a whole bunch of little beach towns that I will probably check out on my way back up to Seward so that I can do the exit glacier, which you can just walk right onto, and then I will head back up to Denali. But so far so good. This morning I got up and drove back to the beach and set up the little camp stove for the first time. There were these Asian tourists that they declined the lunch on the glacier tour, and they had all brought their own ramen containers, and so they took the hot water from the tea station and made the kitchen crew microwave their ramen for like 3 hours straight. So I couldn't stop thinking about this udon ramen that they'd been eating, and I'd had a packet of udon in the van. So I got up this morning and made it, and it was so windy I had to like move the windscreens and stand over the stove hoping that I could get this water hot enough. I had some spinach in the cooler and I got it made, and then I like closed everything down and went to eat it, and the wind picked up and it was just blowing the soup out of the spoon. So I'm sure everybody parked on this beach was like, what is this girl doing? Because soup is just flying onto the table and not making it into my mouth. So I moved back to the car, checked out my milepost guide, figured out whether or not I could go see the Kilcher homestead, which I called and left a message. Fingers crossed I get to go explore that today. And then I went walking around on the Spit. I don't know what marketing genius decided to name such a beautiful space the Spit, but it is like the craziest sandbar with water on both sides, and the beach, the waves are really gentle, they don't break really high, and you can walk for miles on this gorgeous sand. So I did that for a while this morning. The sun came out. It's much warmer than it was when I got up about an hour and a half ago. And so yeah, I'm just gonna explore Homer, more of the peninsula, and keep going. I am really happy I did this. I've been talking to the homeowners, sending them updates. Everybody's checking to make sure that I'm okay. Jess from North Pole was like, I have a friend in Valdez. She says you can park in her driveway and she'll give you the Wi-Fi password and you can knock on the door and go to the bathroom. And I just think it's so wonderful that they're still like looking out for me and trying to take care of me. I didn't take her up on the offer because this van has the loudest brakes ever, and I didn't want to wake them up 5 o'clock in the morning and then be like, why did we say that we would host this girl? And it worked out really fine in the parking lot at the marina. I parked close to the restaurant I had dinner at, hoping I could still use their Wi-Fi, but they shut it down for the night. But yeah, overall, I would highly recommend van camping. When Jewel was talking about hitchhiking her way to Mexico and moving to LA and sleeping in her car, just the sheltered suburban girl in me couldn't fathom how anybody could possibly think that that was safe and do that. And no, it probably isn't the safest thing in the world. A lot could happen to you here, but I try to park near other cars. I know that I could be completely by myself parked on the beach, but I don't need to get stuck. I don't need to be abducted. I just try to play it safe, but the freedom and flexibility of being like, hey, that looks cool, I want to go do that, or I completely had to change my plan and I really only had 3 reservations to move. I had to do the train, the ferry, and the Denali bus tour. So it kept things really wide open for these 9 days, which I can't believe are almost half over. Like, that is shocking to me. I had my first public shower on the ferry, which was quite an experience. Hopefully I only have one more. I think I'm stopping in Anchorage on my way back up to Denali since it is on the way. So hopefully I can have a real shower at my house sit before I go. But yeah, so far so good, no regrets, having a great time. The